wrestling news on a WrestleMania weekend ahead. It's Wrestling Rants. Baby, yeah, let's get into it one last time. WrestleMania retrospective coming on down the pipeline here. Fifth WrestleMania retrospective. This is our final one, looking at all the WrestleManias in Southern California, and bam, 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 here we go. We're just a few days away from the big weekend WrestleMania, and a lot of shows are already kicking off tonight on Thursday as part of WrestleMania week. If I was in Los Angeles, you guarantee I would be at a show right now. I probably would have been at a show at about noon. I would have been at shows last night. Even there was some indie shows going on around that time. There is a wild, extensive list of WrestleMania week events planned in Los Angeles. Go online, look at the list. Multiple independent shows every single day, including GCW's collective series of events, which I'm going to try to check out most of them this year for sure. We'll be doing rapid rants on everything I've watched this week with WrestleMania week. Probably some stuff we'll be covering even a few days after WrestleMania. All in all, a lot of just straight up to the point rants coming down this week and weekend, and everything as part of WrestleMania week, right here, Wrestling Rants. So let's get into the final retrospective. We're taking a look back at WrestleMania 21 right here, April 3rd, 2005, Staples Center, Los Angeles. And yours truly was actually at this WrestleMania. This was my second WrestleMania. I was at WrestleMania 19, and now this at Los Angeles, approximately 2 years later, is my second WrestleMania experience. I had a lot of family in California and friends as well, so it was an easy thing to kind of get to California and get to this show. I think I had spring break around that time with, I think it was in college at the time actually, so it worked out pretty well overall in everything. And actually, I was out of college, but I had the opportunity, I had the time off, so it just worked out perfectly. So the event shirt, obviously, from the Staples Center from WrestleMania 21. Got the DVD right here. All the accoutrements for this rant, if you will. Let's get some, before I talk about my experience a little more in depth, let's get some numbers, the numbers game here. 20,193 in attendance for this WrestleMania. It was a jam-packed Staples Center for sure. This is the first time I'd ever been to anything at Staples Center. So this was all in all just quite a spectacle for me personally. Buy rate of, get this, they eclipsed over 1 million buys in this one. 1,090,000 buys. That is impressive for this WrestleMania. Things started skyrocketing. Peaked, I think, a few years later at WrestleMania 23, and wow, I mean, just an impressive buy rate. $7.1 million in tickets. That's pretty high, especially for this time. I know personally I paid about, I think, $150 for my seat, which was a lower level seat, kind of cascading on the corner, maybe about 5-6 rows up. In the one corner, I'd be on the TV side of the arena where the cameras would show. It was more down on that corner, almost before it turns on the lower level. It was kind of that last little crevice of a section there, right by a Budweiser sign. I just remember that. And there was a lot of people, a lot of talent that were watching WrestleMania from the sidelines in this corner of the Staples Center. I remember seeing Linda McMahon and a lot of just talent that weren't on the show, on the actual pay-per-view. They were just kind of hanging out, checking it out from the corner sidelines there too. So nice little tidbit of information there from my experience at WrestleMania. The crowd was insane for this show. Wow. LA crowds usually never disappointed, just like Chicago crowds, and this was no exception here. Just a spectacle of a show. This was certainly different environment and different kind of vibe, I guess, compared to my first experience in Seattle. It was more of an outdoor stadium and just a completely different vibe than this. This was much more intimate in a smaller arena such as Staples Center. Still, 20,000 people is 20,000 people. That's a big crowd, no question about it. Tagline for this one, of course, was WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. The first iteration. Obviously, we have WrestleMania Goes Hollywood coming up this weekend as well. Part 2, if you will, on that tagline. Big thing with this one was the Hollywood skits. I really liked the Dirty Harry one with The Undertaker. The Kurt Angle one, the Harry Met Sally one, I thought was kind of good. Basic Instinct one, I kind of liked. There was a lot of them that were actually not too bad. That really made this one stand out a little bit more too. That they were really putting in a lot of unique promotional efforts into this WrestleMania for sure. Tickets sold out in 1 minute. Can you believe that? 1 freaking minute. Unbelievable. I actually bought it, the ticket, quite a while. I think it was maybe a couple weeks, maybe before WrestleMania, or maybe before that. I got the ticket off eBay, of all places, and then actually made a deal with a friend of mine, Matt Young, to get exchange tickets out. And I think I ended up getting a better ticket because of that. I think he bought my ticket, I paid for on eBay, and then I got this one from another scalper, another one from eBay or something. But like I said, about $150 I think I paid for it. Today's inflation, that ticket would probably have been easily $500. It's, maybe even more because it was in a smaller venue. Here's some matches that didn't happen, that were rumored to happen, but that did not end up happening, obviously. Lita versus Trish, that was one that was definitely in the books. Lita got hurt with a knee injury. They were working that like crazy even right after WrestleMania, which we're going to talk about in this rant. We're going to extensively look back at the Raw after Mania, because I was at that event too, with an interesting story about that as well. Edge versus Jericho versus Benoit was also slated for this show. Separate. At one point, separate from the Money in the Bank match. So there was originally different competitors in that match. Instead, the idea for the triple threat got fused into the first ever Money in the Bank match, of course, which was, if you haven't known, Chris Jericho's idea. He's been quoted as saying that, and that's been confirmed in many spots. Here's another interesting match. Kane and The Undertaker were originally planned to work against Snitsky and Heidenreich. Ay. Okay, I'm glad that match didn't happen at WrestleMania. I'll just leave it at that. The Randy Orton Undertaker match was by far way better than that idea even sounds at all. Here's one really big match, which I guess there has been some sort of interview with Dwayne Johnson where he spoke on this. But he said at one point there was an attempt at WrestleMania 21 for The Rock against Sting. You recall Sting was just, I think he was in TNA at the time, but no big deal. Didn't really have an Iron Planet contract or anything like that. Boy, that would have been quite a match to add to this already pretty solid card that ended up being a really, really excellent WrestleMania work rate-wise. We talked about Money in the Bank, Jericho's idea. This was the first Money in the Bank, as we talked about, and this was an exclusive Money in the Bank for the Raw title. So keep that in mind as well, which I think at the time was the World Heavyweight Championship, Batista. This was the first Mania where both the World Heavyweight Championship and the WWE Championship changed hands. A little bit of a thing about it, though, is that the brand split hadn't only occurred until, I think this was like the second year of it, or something like that on the WrestleMania stage. So not as much of a big deal as it sounds. This was Howard Finkel's last WrestleMania doing the ring announcing. Just a note of that, he moved over to the Hall of Fame pretty much exclusively after this point. Tons of celebrities in attendance. Motorhead performed Triple H's theme, as we know. The beard that Lemmy had, Triple H kind of replicated it. I don't know if anybody ever noticed that. That was a tribute to Lemmy, apparently from Triple H. Billy Gibbons' ZZ Top was there. Black Eyed Peas, another musical artist. Billy Corgan was there from who obviously owns the NWA now. Anthony Kiedis of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Ice Cube was there. Carmen Electra. Sylvester Stallone, who was at the Hall of Fame inducting Hogan, if you recall, the night prior. Hollywood music producer Rick Rubin. Will Sasso of wrestling lore from WCW. David Arquette, another guy from WCW lore who was in Hollywood. Adam Sandler, Rob Schneider. Matt Groening of The Simpsons fame. Macaulay Culkin was also here making his second WrestleMania appearance on the celebrity side. Pre-show wise, we had an interpromotional battle royal that I did make it to see just in time. It was just starting up right as I got in my seat at the Staples Center. We won't go over all the competitors. There's 15 from Raw, 15 from SmackDown. Booker T from SmackDown ended up beating Chris Masters at the finish of this battle royal. They were the two last competitors at 11 minutes and 20 seconds. This was a standard. It was a nice kickoff to the show. I'd give it maybe 2.5 to 2.75 stars. It was a very standard battle royal with nothing much to call home about on that match that really didn't air on a pre-show, by the way. I think it was only exclusively dropped on the DVD after WrestleMania 21 concluded. So let's get into the main card. This was a hell of a WrestleMania looking back, man. The work rate on the show was so good, and up to a certain point, it was looking like this would be one for the books that would compete maybe with the quality of, I would say, WrestleMania 17. It would have been a good example of one that just really delivered in the ring. This was one of the other ones. And WrestleMania 20 had moments too, for sure. 19, another really excellent work rate show. So this was right in the same echelon of those type of shows. The 17, the 18 arguably was still pretty good. 19 into 20, these were all really well worked, well laid out matches. The booking was relatively strong. I mean, it was just excellent all around. We started out with the movie trailer montage to kick off the pay-per-view. First match, Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero. This was Eddie Guerrero's last WrestleMania, of course. He passed away later in the year. I went 3 3/4 stars on this one. I kind of think their Halloween Havoc match in WCW was better. I remember looking back comparatively on those. This was still a great match. Hurricane Rana finish for Rey Mysterio to kick off WrestleMania in a strong way for this one. Triple H and JBL had a confrontation in the back, which had a sort of irony to it because they both lost their titles and both were kind of egging on each other about who would lose their belts. Money in the Bank was match number 2, the first ever Money in the Bank, and I have to just tell you from a live event perspective, this was a fucking pleasure to be at this match because the electricity in the air was there. There was so many spots that I literally got out of my seat and freaked out at this match. The Shelton Benjamin spot where he climbed up the ladder and clothesline, I believe it was Jericho, actually was shown in the background of that, literally freaking out at that spot. Just so many other good high spots from this match. This was a classic. The original was solid. First Money in the Bank, 4.5 stars, 15 minutes, 12 seconds. Edge wins over Chris Jericho, Christian, Shelton Benjamin, Chris Benoit, and I think, did I get everybody? Was that 1, 2, 3, 4? Oh, and Kane. Excuse me, I didn't forget Kane. Cannot forget about Big Red Machine. Then we move on to a couple segments that were not wrestling match related, but really like blew the roof off the fucking Staples Center. First one was the Eugene Muhammad Hassan angle that led to the return of Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania, and damn, the crowd lost their mind, including myself. Yes, I was a big Hulkamaniac back in the day. Yes, I marked out at Hogan at WrestleMania 19 against Vince. Yes, I marked out like a motherfucker to this segment when Hogan came out and did his spiel. What can I say? It was awesome. Awesome looking back. We move into match 3, Undertaker against Randy Orton. I thought this match also overachieved I gave it a solid 3 3/4. I would even move it into the 4-star range somewhat, a little bit. I think it was better than the Rey Mysterio Eddie Guerrero match as a comparison earlier on the show. So there you go. Reversal Tombstone, Taker won. At this point, Taker was 13-0. I gotta give props as well for a lot of these entrances at this WrestleMania. Taker had a really cool one where he was basically levitating to the ring. Awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. One of the low points of the show was the women's title match. There wasn't much time given to it. 4 minutes of time. Trish Stratus over Christy Hemme with Lita. If you recall, like I said earlier on in this rant, the idea going into this WrestleMania was Lita was going to wrestle Trish. It didn't happen. We got this instead. Not much of a match. Almost pretty much a squash. 4 minutes, chick kick, finish. Trish Stratus goes over. We'll talk about a small little detail. This match was rematched the next night on Monday Night Raw, but it really wasn't. It was more just an angle. We'll get into that in just a moment. Here came the best part of the show, as my opinion. Kurt Angle over Shawn Michaels in an absolute classic that still holds up. When I rewatched this, I was still at the edge of my seat at this match. I remember just electricity in that crowd again. Everybody screaming and hollering at the submission sequences, including myself. I went 4.5 stars on this match. This was one of the best WWE matches of the year, hands down. This was so good from a live event perspective too. The spots where Michaels hit the table, and just the electricity and the energy in that Staples Center. Wow, 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 wow. So awesome. Another awesome side segment that wasn't a match, Piper's Pit, the Stone Cold Steve Austin. I really enjoyed this. I was such a huge fan of Piper back in the day. Obviously was huge into Austin. This was it was like a fever dream kind of segment a little bit on some level. Looking back, it was fun. It was definitely fun. The Carlito interaction was okay too. Looking back, wasn't necessary. I don't know, but it kind of all played a role in the sense where Austin still stunned Piper at the end. But yeah, this was just fun. All around fun segment. Then we moved back into something that wasn't fun at all, and this was the worst part of the show. Trish and Christy was a Matt Classic compared to this one. Sumo match between Akebono from Japan and the Big Show. This had no place on this card. I guess they were trying to do business a little bit with Akebono and whatever maybe organizations he was affiliated with. I really don't get why this happened. This was unnecessary, but I gave it a star just simply because this match went under a minute. 57 seconds. Akebono quickly eliminated the Big Show. At least it was short. Short, painless. They got to the point. They got it over with. It was done. Thankfully for that. Then we got our double main events where there was a lot of conjecture that this card was really rolling on a high freight trains level, and if these two matches would have really hit hard, I think this would have been one of the better WrestleManias in history, perhaps. And unfortunately, the John Cena and JBL match, it just didn't kick into that gear it needed to kick into. The time was I had 11:28 for time on this one, and it just, for all the hype it got, it just didn't really deliver in the ring. That's the simple truth as that. The finish was very much out of nowhere as well. Cena went over. In theory, to have a better impact, this probably would have been better placed in the beginning part of the card, arguably maybe even the first match or something around those lines, because the impact of Cena beating JBL was kind of lessened by the Batista and overshadowed by the Batista win over Triple H. So there was that for sure. I went 3 stars on the WWE title match. It just did not click. However, the actual main event of the show with Batista and Triple H for the gold belt for that World Heavyweight Championship certainly did click. I gave that match 4 stars. The blood added an element of drama to the match for sure. It was very physical. This was an excellent program that they really spent a lot of time to meticulously put details in the breadcrumb trails of sorts of a storyline. this was just a nice culmination of a great storyline that led to this match. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, like, in some levels, the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns stuff a little bit. There was those elements that made that successful, also made this angle storyline program so successful with Batista and Triple H. So that was the end of WrestleMania. Fireworks go off. As a fan at the show, I felt completely satisfied with the show. I remember leaving Staples Center just buzzed because this was such a fucking awesome show. WrestleMania delivered so much for me on this one. And this was a great second time WrestleMania experience for me. Right up there with that experience for 19. This compared to really a top level in terms of some of my WrestleMania experiences. What made it even cooler was that I got one of the best deals I have ever gotten on a ticket last minute for Raw after Mania, the day after this WrestleMania at the Staples Center, still in Los Angeles. Man, it was... I'll just break it down. I went into this show blind, this Raw. I had no ticket. I just thought, I'm going to go down to the Staples Center, and I am just going to see what the scalpers have. I went there. A lot of stuff was high priced. There was a high demand for this show. No question about it. It was a sold-out show. Absolutely sold out for Raw. So I waited, and I waited. I only needed one ticket, so that was an advantage to it. But nothing was really hitting. The prices weren't really working for me. I didn't really have that much money either at this point as well. So, waited. The taping before Raw started, I think it was Sunday Night Heat or something like that. We started taping those matches. And at that point I thought, okay, if something is going to be a deal, it's going to be now. So when that happened, when the show started to kick off and the fans started clearing in and the scalpers became a little bit more desperate, I got a hell of a deal. I got second row, ringside, right, dead center, right in front of the cameras, right in front of the ring, $50. I couldn't fucking believe it. I didn't even know what I was really getting when I paid for the ticket. It was a paper ticket that was kind of vague on where the section was. All I knew was the second row. It was second row of some section which looked to be on the floor, and sure enough, boom. What an experience it was being that close to all of the events right after WrestleMania. And this show, looking back, I hadn't watched it in a while, but I just checked it out, and this show was fantastic. This was a great Raw after Mania. It didn't have big surprises, but it had a lot of really cool moments and appearances, a few decent matches and everything. So let's talk about it. Kicked off with Triple H in the ring, just kind of giving excuses a little bit about losing to Batista at WrestleMania, and that he has his rematch clause that he will certainly use. Decent open to the show. It was a decent promo by Triple H coming off of WrestleMania, and that was kind of the vibe from this show. Or one thing to take is that there was a lot of follow-up promos from WrestleMania that were pretty good here. Didn't feel heavy on the verbiage. Didn't feel heavily scripted. It just was a natural flow of promos on this show that really, they weren't bad at all. Intercontinental title match was the first match on Raw. They went 7.5 minutes, triple threat. Shelton Benjamin beat Chris Jericho and Christian. I went 3.5 stars. I could have even probably nudged into a 3 3/4 for this one. Just a hot match. They didn't have much time. That was not including commercial. I think they took a commercial in there somewhere perhaps. But big Bulldog springboard spot by Shelton Benjamin and Chris Jericho, who had Christian in the walls of Jericho. And yeah, Benjamin went over on this one. Like I said, 3 3/4, 3.5, something around those lines. This was just excellent and a very quick match as well. Orton came out to do a promo in the ring talking about the Undertaker loss a little bit. And immediately kind of segued into challenging Batista on this show, and we did get that match. Eric Bischoff made an appearance, made that match happen as the main event, which is a bit surprising from me being there live. I was a bit taken back by, like, wow, they're already going back to Orton and Batista. And the storyline here was that Orton had already had 2 wins over Batista before this, leading into previous parts of the year and things like that. So I was a bit surprised as a fan that they like just shoehorned this match in the spot it did right after WrestleMania. Literally the day after, you would have thought they would have maybe given this a couple of weeks to like promote it or something. But Trish versus Christy Hemme was next, a rematch from WrestleMania, but it went no contest. Trish knocked out Christy immediately with a chin kick before the ring bell even happened. She then attacked Lita's knee, and Lita was selling like crazy. She had a kind of a leg lock of some sort on Lita's knee. So that was setting up, I think, the next pay-per-view after this. They finally had that match, if I recall. Shawn Michaels came out, did a promo speaking about his match with Kurt Angle. Muhammad Hassan came out with Daivari, interrupts Michaels. They get into it a bit. And he attacked Shawn Michaels. I can't remember if they followed up with this with an actual match or not. I would guess they did, probably on a Raw or something like that. I do not believe they made pay-per-view. But this was a bit of a flat feeling to this one. I couldn't get into Muhammad Hassan much at all at this time. It was just a heavy-handed, forced storyline and a forced character. I didn't think, like, not really anybody really wanted to. I don't know, just a weird vibe. That's all I can say. This was not a weird vibe. Match 3. Or technically, too, that Trish match wasn't really much of a match. Match 3, Chris Benoit over Edge. 12 minutes. There's a commercial in there, too, so it's probably about a 15-minute match. Damn, this was solid. I went 3.5 stars as well on this one. This was just great. Edge missed the spear. Benoit got a roll up for the win. Afterwards, Edge went crazy on Benoit. If you recall, there was a lot of psychology in this match as well. If you recall from the Money in the Bank, where Benoit's arm was just beaten the fuck out of, and he was about to get the Money in the Bank case. Edge blasted him with a chair on his shoulder and his arm. So the same story was here. Edge lost, but attacked Benoit with that chair afterwards. Really stiff chair shots to the side of the arm, shoulder. Man, this was something. I was looking back. Also, another thing that was something was another segment in the ring, not a wrestling match. Simon Dean was out with Maven, and they were doing their little spiel about the Simon system and shit like that. Out comes Stone Cold Steve Austin. That crowd loses their goddamn mind. This was a fun segment live to be at. Austin, it was almost comedic the way Austin was manhandling these guys in this angle, in this segment. This was just great stuff. Really, this was one of those segments that I still will never forget being at live, for sure. It was fun. Orton was backstage, ran into Kane. They talked a little bit about Kane explaining to Orton that he will not understand the ways of the Undertaker. And Orton somehow segued that into saying that he does, and he'll show it when he defeats Batista. It was kind of a confusing little talk that they had in the back there. Then we got to the main event, which unfortunately didn't have much time. They were running out of TV time. Only 5 minutes and 20 seconds for this one. Batista went over Orton clean. I was amazed, but they wanted to show dominance to the Batista push right after WrestleMania, of course, and this certainly accomplished that. 5 minutes, 20 seconds. Batista won with the Batista bomb, and I went 3 stars on this one. They were pretty physical for the time it was, which was not much time, but a fun little ending to a really fun Raw after WrestleMania for sure. And WrestleMania itself was just a spectacular Mania this year for 21. Other than Akebono and the Christy Hemme match with Trish Stratus, there was nothing of. And I guess the Cena and JBL match, you could argue, was a bit different than you would expect, and not as satisfying. But other than that, the rest of this show was phenomenal. I will go A- for WrestleMania 21. And with that said, that's it for the set of rants, Rantrospective WrestleManias. Now it's onward and upward. Rapid rants coming on this weekend, tonight, tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. All a part of WrestleMania week. Multiple rants. multiple updates on things coming for WrestleMania this weekend as well. Come on right back here for more WrestleMania rants right here. Wrestling Rants, baby!